In the wild, wolves attack only the weak, but the true predator defeats only the strongest. Today, we've prepared for you a special video that is thoroughly saturated with brutality. Let's meet Don Frye, the Predator, together with all the knockouts and submissions in his legendary career. In 1996, Don decided to follow in the footsteps of his friend Dan Severn and arrange a challenge in the UFC, where at the time there were virtually no rules. The Puerto Rican fighter Thomas Ramirez confronted him, claiming to have won 300 fights, though apparently counting those that were won playing Street Fighter on a vending machine at the shopping mall. The Puerto Rican audience was buzzing at the smaller Frye, from whom they expected a powerful takedown because of his time sparring with partner Dan Severn. But they didn't take into account the boom of his exact right hook, which knocked out their local fighter, predictably from a guy who performed in the professional boxing ring. It was an exact short blow, and it's scary to imagine what would have happened if the Predator had hit harder. This time, Don decided to show that he was good at grappling. He was opposed by the huge Sam Adkins, a boxer and sparring partner of the famous Tommy Morrison. By the way, at the time, they liked to enter similar sparrings into the resume, which are not always real, in order to look like a more serious fighter. The legendary Dan Severn was in Frye's corner. At the start of the fight, Don threw the jab and immediately did a takedown. With such a big guy, he was not going to play games. Frantically, he finished off his opponent on the ground, where Adkins was simply helpless, and John McCarthy stops the fight. It was a real destruction from the Predator. The big guy was upset, but held no grudge. Here we see the tactics that, in the future, would become the basics of the MMA: faking, transferring, and then finishing off on the ground. By the way, Adkins scored 7 victories in his entire career, with 20 defeats. One cannot help but respect such people who aspire to victory after so many failures. You can say what you want about the Predator, but for Big Daddy Gary Goodridge, he was one tough opponent. Gary Goodridge, who had already managed to defeat 2 opponents in the UFC 8, intended to teach the impudent Don a lesson. Gary was an arm wrestler and a boxing champion in Canada who had just gained a black belt in the Kuk Sul Won style. Don decided to get in close to deliver blows, but Goodridge grabbed him in a bear grip. There was a throw from Gary, followed by a kick. Then Frye realized how strong his opponent was and decided to show his work in the clinch. Frye delivered murderous uppercuts, inflicting damage on Goodridge, but Gary survived and tries to throw Don to the floor. Frye gripped the grid like a life preserver. Gary threw the Predator, but on the ground he could do nothing with the elite fighter. Don took a dominant position, and at this point, finishing Gary off was just a formality. An exhausted Goodridge tapped out from the loss of strength, as he later admitted. Frye's magnificent victory in the UFC 8 tournament was the first championship title in his professional career. In the impressive arena of the UFC 9, Don had a super fight against Brazilian fighter Amari Betetti.
Don Frye, the returning Ultimate Fighting Champion. I'm returning tonight to retain my title. There can be only one.
Don was the reigning champion since he was the last to win at UFC 8. The brave Betetti rushes into the fight, but as the commentators noted, he was weak in the clinch against a classic wrestler like Don. He simply brushes the Brazilian off and hits him with a couple of punches. Amari is so impudent that he decides to directly compete with the Predator in the clinch, and even manages a few timely hits. But Frye strikes him in the rack and then knees him in the head.
Another one to the body. He's wide open.
Boy, Frye is just dominating.
He has just pummeled him.
It's been so hard.
Then, a takedown by the American, and Frye delivers a powerful beating on the ground. Frye elbows his opponent's spine, a move now forbidden, and then finally delivers knees to the head. Nevertheless, Bettetti did not think to give up. The referee stopped the fight to preserve his health. The Arizona fighter gave a good fight, but this time he was met by a serious challenge from the big Brazilian man.
Well, I would think you totally dominated every phase of that fight.
Thank you. We figured it'd probably go about 30 to 60 seconds. Obviously, he's a lot better competitor than what we gave him credit for.
Are you someone that feels comfortable in that guard position?
Oh, yes, I have no problem with being in the guard. I'm real comfortable in that. Actually, it's a rest for myself.
I'm Don Frye, the returning Ultimate Fighting Champion. I'm not here to prove my skills. I know what I can do. I'm not here to say hi to anybody. I'm not at rest. I'm not at peace. I have a real bad attitude. And when I go into the octagon, lock up your women and children, because all hell is going to break loose.
This time, Don Frye returns as part of the 8th tournament in UFC 10. His first rival is Mark Hall, a small fighter who adheres to an Oriental fighting style. Frye, who is the undefeated champion, returns to prove his superiority once again. Hall opens with an unwise move, allowing Frye to throw his opponent to the floor. This is where the real problems began for Hall. The Predator delivers his hardest blows into Hall's body, stating later he was avoiding striking his smaller opponent in the head.
He's got the best punching ability, maybe in the UFC.
He's trying to pass that short, crisp punch.
Don abruptly cut off Hall's oxygen supply with his forearm and continued to strike his ribs with hard blows. Hall's sides were clearly injured, but despite this, he continued to fight back, attempting blows to the head. It was clear that Hall was severely beaten, but he seemed ready to fight to the end. Finally, it appeared that Hall's corner advised him to surrender, which he refused. The Predator strikes continue to cripple Mark, until Frye spoke to the referee, John McCarthy. Questioning if the fight should be stopped. McCarthy finally stopped the fight, angering Hall, despite the fact the fight went on for more than 10 minutes. 10 minutes of unilateral destruction. And that night, Mark Hall earned the respect of MMA fans around the world.
Winner of our first bout, Don Frye.
Oh, look at that embrace, the mutual respect.
The Predator, Don.
In the semifinals, Don was waiting for an even more dangerous opponent, who had a black belt in judo and was the champion of the prestigious Golden Gloves boxing tournament, Brian Johnston. As Abbott commented on this fight, the only thing Brian needs to do in a duel with Frye is to immediately throw in the towel. But was that good advice? Brian managed to stop Frye's takedown with a knee to the body and a right hook to the jaw. Don dove in with tough punches, but the huge Johnston responded to our champion, meeting blow for blow. The Predator grins and realizes he does not want to face off with Johnston in this manner. Don receives powerful short right hooks from Brian.
There it is. That's the prerequisite to fighting. Now that warms my heart more.
But after a few minutes of a tough fight, endurance and experience begin to decide the outcome. Don decided he had enough and finally transfers his opponent to the ground. He is too tired to finish off in his usual frantic style, but the takedown was enough. Johnston realized that he was no longer able to resist and surrendered, avoiding further damage to his health.
Survives a tough by Superman in Superman's underwear.
Don Frye wins it on the tap out.
However, he had earned Don Frye's respect. Unfortunately, in the finals, Don lost to Mark Coleman, who at the time had demolished everyone in his path. After this defeat, Don went on to take by storm the Japanese promotion Japan by arranging a rematch with Mark Hall. This fight began about the same as their last meeting, though this time Don delivered a right hook in the head. Don also fought in the right stance and not in the left as before. The Predator was not going to give Mark a head start and adhered to his established tactics of striking his opponent on the ground. At one point, Hall even screamed in pain. But Don's strangulation with his forearm put an end to Hall's torment. It was certain that Hall had returned to this fight for reasons other than money. Now, on a winning streak, Don Frye returned to the UFC for the Ultimate Tournament, where only the champions of past tournaments and the toughest promotion fighters fought. In the very first round, the Predator's opponent was Big Daddy Gary Goodridge, looking to get revenge. This time he was fresh and prepared. Don was clearly happy to face off against Big Daddy. Entering a hockey clinch by the neck, the fighters delivered blow for blow. But Gary couldn't escape as Don held on to him, delivering a cruel punishment. Although Goodridge is not inferior in any way, Frye is more experienced in the clinch, and his right hand repeatedly struck Big Daddy's ribs. Sweeping strikes from Goodridge and a powerful takedown managed to get Frye himself on the ground. An attempt to reach an armbar put Frye in a dominant position, and at that point, Gary surrenders. He later said it was because of his clothing. It was simply terribly hot and I could not breathe. In 1997, Frye again went to Japan. While there, he fought under hybrid rules against the amateur Eric Valdez. Just after this fight, the Predator decided to abandon real fighting in order to go into pro wrestling. 5 years after his fight with Tank Abbott, he returned to the MMA under the legendary promotion Pride FC that eclipsed the UFC at the time. He returned to battle with the uncontrollable hurricane, Gilbert Ivel.
Why the comeback?
Ego, just to see if I could do it again, but also for my children. I want to give them a good life, secure a future for them, let them go to college so they don't have to beat people up for a living.
Okay.
2001, Don Frye's first appearance in Pride FC, not long after the world was shocked by the September 11th terrorist attack. That's why Don came out with a flag and wearing a patriotic t-shirt and shorts colored like an American flag, borrowing the idea from Brian Johnston. In Japan, Frye was a stranger. He played a good villain and was going to bring that style to the MMA. The fight began with a murderous stare-down. Ivel starts with a knee strike, followed by a takedown from Don. But Don had felt the blow. He gets Ivel in a clinch, but this time there is no net, which hampers Don's arsenal of tricks. Keep an eye on Gilbert's hands as he tries to gouge Don's eyes. The wrestler tried to hit from the ropes. Ivel flies to avoid a real scuffle. Gilbert attempts a knee strike, but Don continues to clinch, defending his body well. Ivel uses an inappropriate technique, clutching at the ropes. In the end, he receives the first yellow card from the referee, losing 10% of his fee for the fight. Frye is showing signs of anger, but Frye is the Predator, and the fight continues. There's another tough strike. It's hard to imagine what it would be like to be in a fight with Ivel in a cage, as opposed to the ring. Don delivers an old-school headbutt, showing that he also knows how to fight tough. The Hurricane again clings to the ropes and receives yet another yellow card. It seems that Gilbert is focused on one technique and strikes with a knee again. This time Don responds with powerful blows to the body. Ivel receives a third yellow card after trying to grab Don's gloves. A transfer to the ground from the UFC champion, and finally a full mount. Listen to how the public responds. But Gilbert does not give up easily and tries to finish off Frye. But Don throws Ivel yet again.
got the double. Because he looked very weak. He was squeezing his eyes also already early in the fight. After that, when he got poked in the eye, he was squeezing his eyes like he couldn't see enough. So he definitely wants to be in this position. He can buy him.
The Predator uses all his strength to stop the Hurricane, but Ivel's love for using the ropes worked against him, and the referee finally decides to disqualify Ivel. Don Frye won despite an injury to his leg and eyes. The whole battle looked as if the Predator was trying to force a wild beast into the cage. Ivel was clearly displeased with the outcome, but Don tried to calm him down.
Gilbert's all down. We can do it again, brother. We can do it again. We can do it again.
Don Frye announcing that they can do it again.
December 31st, 2001, Frye storms the Inoki Bom-Ba-Ye tournament where he is met by the dangerous K1 fighter Cyril Abidi, who defeated the legendary Peter Aerts. Frye threw himself into the fight like an armored train, and after a series of strikes throws the kickboxer to the ground. All that Abidi feared happened within the first few seconds. Powerful blows, the Predator connects with his knees and beats his opponent's body in his signature style. Frye attempted a Kimura, but Cyril throws the veteran in an excellent comeback. But it was nothing that Don hadn't seen before. In the second round, Don increases the intensity, and getting behind his opponent, he forces the enemy to surrender, defeating the younger fighter. Cyril is upset. Being defeated by a veteran with an injured back was not in his plans. And finally, one that you're all waiting for, Don Frye versus Yoshihiro Takayama. Having thrown a couple of double blows, Frye enters a clinch, but was surprised that the Japanese fighter did not retreat. The crazy pace of fighting caused the audience to simply explode. Takayama was a wrestler, but that doesn't mean that he was just a pushover. A powerful throw from the Japanese, a knee to the head, and a series of punches try to catch Frye off guard. The Japanese monster was not inferior in strength or courage to Don, but when the fighters became tired, everything depended on the endurance and experience in which the UFC champion exceeded his opponent. Takayama's right hook was constantly being pulled out, to which Yoshihiro responded with knee strikes, which caused Don a lot of pain, as he later admitted. The most powerful blows from Frye left the Japanese fighter exhausted. Finally, the referee decides to return the mouth guard to Don, and the fighters again arrange a hard exchange of punches in the center of the ring. Takayama again decided to throw a strike, but he no longer had the strength. Frye gets the mount position where he begins to deliver a beating to the Japanese, and the referee finally stops the fight.
All that I expected. What a beautiful fight. More was running to the sides. Bob caught him, knocked him down, and then those big.
The next opponent was Chad Rowan, nicknamed Akebono, at the K1 Heroes Tournament in 2006. Having lost to the decision of the judges to Yoshihiro Nakayo in 2004, the Predator decides to take a break and return to do battle with Akebono, a sumo champion.
You know, if we don't have the most exciting fight, at least we're going to have the best highlight reel. You know, we're going to make a highlight reel for K1 for the next 10 years.
Super Mario goes to a showdown with a meaty Godzilla. In the first round, Frye begins to break through with his hard punches, and a sumo wrestler does the only thing that he can. Don does not cope badly with him in a clinch, striking as hard as he can, but the big man does not intend to retreat and crushes our veteran with his weight, even with Frye's blows. A right hook from Don nevertheless damages the sumo wrestler. Frye then takes out Akebono's leg, from which he falls to the canvas, followed by some strikes on the ground and a guillotine choke. It was not Don's easiest fight, considering his age, and he was exhausted.
Fuck, that's tough. Hey, watch.
At the same 2006 K1 Heroes 6 tournament, Don fights with pro wrestler Yoshihisa Yamamoto, who had even defeated Mark Kerr, but the manner in which he won was controversial. The conflict began with a stare-down. The Predator descends down on his opponent and delivers blows in a clinch. The nimble Japanese responds with low kicks, footwork, and a periodic quick combination. Despite the fact that Don is inferior to the Japanese fighter's speed, he is good with defense, which allows him to cope with the incoming strikes. After a good right hook from the Japanese, Don delivers a blow which drops Yamamoto. He catches the fighter from the back with a strangulation hold. An excellent move from the veteran. Yoshihisa Yamamoto's last win was in 2004. But despite that, he was not going to give up and gave a good fight to the UFC champion. He later ended his career in 2012. This time, Don is in another hard conflict. It's with Korean fighter Kim Min-soo. Don's had some difficult matches with Asian fighters. Still, in 2006 at the K1, the Predator is eager to consolidate his success. Frye tries to diversify his game by including powerful low kicks in his arsenal, fending off the Korean fighter's leg. But Kim Min-soo is not so simple and confidently throws Frye. It is worth noting that Frye is now 40 years old and is showing his age. But he still had a hard hit and drops Kim Min-soo with his right, and Frye is pleased that he did his best. As an aside, it was in a fight with Kim Min-soo that the MMA's Brock Lesnar made his professional debut. In 2008, Don met with Brian Pardo. He was considered a very strong opponent, but no stronger than Don's jab, and clearly not stronger than his powerful right. Boom! A short, fast right hook. It seems Don only gets better over the years. Frye goes in to finish, holds him in a choking grip, but it seems that the referee decided that Pardo had lost consciousness from the first blow and recorded Don Frye's victory by knockout. Grandfather power from the aging Predator. The last match in which Don Frye was considered a Predator was in a fight against Rich Moss, a middleweight, in 2009. The aging Don tries to fight with his right hand and stop Rich's takedowns. Moss throws Don, but Frye seems to be intent on taking Moss's back and getting him in a strangulation hold. The audience blocks the view, but no matter what, the referee recorded that it was victory by strangulation from the back. After this fight, Don will try twice more to dish it out in 2009 and 2011, and both times he will lose by knockout. Most recently, he has recovered from pneumonia, from which he had fallen into a coma. Sometimes he appears at UFC events and is doing quite well. So the path of Don Frye, the Predator, in the MMA was cruel and brutal. We hope you enjoyed this video. Please don't forget to press the thumbs up and leave your comments. It will help us to determine if we should continue making similar videos to this one. Until next time.